All right, we have Yevon versus Vid in the TTAC15 semifinals. Yevon has not lost a single game getting here, 2-0ing both Vialva and Turds, two very strong players. Maybe Yevon's the real champion of SE Carver. And then on the other side, we have Vid, who made it to the quarterfinals, beating, I think, solid opposition. I can check that bracket, where we got. Beating Cliffy and Aesila. Yeah, Aesila's a champion in this format. And then falling to Tezuka, but he got lucky losered back in. I'm in general not pro lucky loser so late in a tournament, but if you are gonna lucky loser, I am very glad it went to someone who did make the quarterfinals, right? Who did make a run in this tournament that was close to getting them here. And we'll see how they do. Our first rule set we're going to look at is the open. All rules are in effect, same plus, same wall plus wall combo. All decks are available. Levels are 3, 6, 9, 10. Must use one card per level. No corner AAs. And one level 10 should start with the first letter of your opponent's name. So let's look at what happened here. We see Yevon using Vormav. That's his level 10 that uses the first letter of Vid's name. And we see Vid using Nanaki and oh no, I don't know the name of 8678, but I'm gonna assume it starts with a Y, right? Otherwise, we gotta rerun this. Actually, what is the name of that card? Let's find out. This will just take a moment. In the meantime, we can think a little about the hands. I always like seeing SEs. You know, it's fun that when they get their chance to shine. View cards. Where are you at? You're at the bottom. View cards. Okay. So nice to see Nanaki in action. We can see Vid in general. Weirdly, the only A in his hand is on the level 9, not on one of the level 10s. So going for very dynamic level 10s and a 6-5-6-6 that hopes to cover A's while dodging being covered by cards like that himself. There can be some downside to doing this, of course, because it means your 6-5-6-6 does not necessarily play well off your own cards. It is a card trying to hit your opponent's when you don't know what your opponent will have, rather than hitting your own, and you do know what you will have, so you can sort of more reliably make a card connect. Lorana Kanan. Wait. Wait up. Wait up. Okay. So, alright, we'll come back to this. But, if we go to FF7, Nanaki. Okay. So, Vid has broken Stips. Its opponent's username, so it's not that I don't know that Yevon's name is actually, something else. Okay. So Vid has definitely broken Stips. All right. And Yevon starts 5-1, 5-6, and 5. Oh, let's think about Yevon's hand a little too. Yevon has gone as rare filled as he can. You can see his starter combines decently well with, I forget if that's Fussy or Tella, but let's call him Fussy. A5-1A, you can see those play off each other reasonably well. And he's gone with Hildebrand Manderville. And I have said in the past that any rule set where you can run Hildebrand, you should run Hildebrand. This is the most powerful card in the game, but it is at level 9, right? And this means no rule set should include level 9 without very careful stipulations, because it's also a card not everyone's going to have access to, and it's just way too powerful. I think it is more powerful than any level 10. Yojimbo really showed the power of Larsa, and that's just an absolutely elite level 10 card. But I don't think it's a game breaking level 10 card. It may be the best level 10 card, but it is not one that is so far beyond other cards. But you get a card that is clearly better than that at level 9. I do not think this card should have been made, but if it is, you just have to run it whenever you can, and I would also run it here. Interesting choices from Yevon to have the multiple ones to the right for A5, A1 to play off. You could easily see that being a weakness, but I think as he's going to play out the hand, especially on first turn, but on second turn you don't have to play both of them, they're never going to be cards that he's holding on too late, right? He's going to set up to have the level 9s and 10s as sweepers, and play off that. All right, 5-1, 5-6, and 5. That's a setup. And here also we see some of the difference between first and second turn, where first turn often wants dynamism. You want to be able to capture what they're putting out. As I have said repeatedly in all kinds of videos, if you imagine a game with no combo, or just every card is an AAAA. Just imagine a game where every card is an AAAA. Then combo doesn't matter because combo can't happen, right? And all rules in effect, right? First turn wins by force if they know what they're doing, if they play correctly. Which is to say, if first turn can take at every opportunity they want to, and first turn knows their formations and setups and what moves are viable and what moves aren't, first turn wins by force, right? And so this is to say, like, say you start in 1, they capture from 2, the only winning move is to play in 4, right? If you play in 6 or 3 or somewhere else, you give up the win. But what this means, what this tells us about Triple Triad, because that's obviously not how Triple Triad is played, is that if there is no combo potential and first turn can take at every point they want to, they will win. So second turn's goal is to make stuff first turn at some point cannot take, or to set up combo potential that counteracts that. And one of the downsides of playing a more dynamic hand, a card with like, and I suffered from this in the day because I used to overchoose 8-8-7-6s. I think I was probably better at playing in game, but worse at hand selection in some ways. Um, but what I sort of have realized now that I don't know if I pieced together then was 8-8-7-6s are much better first turn cards than they are second turn cards. They are very good at capturing things, and they are not as good at not being captured, right? It's useful to have those high numbers that won't get hit. So when seeing a starter like this, my instinct is figure out something that creates a difficulty for the opponent, and that is harder to do so when we don't have as large numbers. Now, one thing we could do is 2-8-A6 and 1. That looks pretty natural. We don't have to use both of our low levels. We will have to find a way to use one, but we don't have to use both. Another thing we should do is check the opponent's max power in every direction. It's a 10 in 3 directions and a 9 in 1, so that seems pretty strong. But we could also check their second best number in each direction. And we could see that's a 9 going up, that's an 8 going to the left, repeated, that's another 10 going down, but it's only a 5 going to the right. So if we did something annoying to the right, maybe we could cover that. But actually, we have really bad coverage of Hildebrand, right? If we played in 3 or 9, almost whatever we put there, their only capture is in 2 or 8 with Hildebrand. And if you have any combo play against that, suddenly you create real opportunities, but you don't have any combo play against that. That makes this fairly difficult. Because we already have the game and I'm not analyzing this live, I'm just going to see what they did next. All right, 6-5, 6-6, and 9. This makes sense to me without having thought about the move much, right? It makes the game going right. So it says your only card here that has a capture is Hildebrand, right? If you don't play, like, if I'm forcing that card out of your hand. That card will probably land at some point at 8, and it will be very good in 8, but then you won't have that card in your hand, and you will have a lot of trouble if you ever need to go right. How many captures are there in 6? Let's check the captures in 6. We have also limited some potential there, but Fussy is safe in 6. So we are conceding very good captures. I think this was a tough starter to meet with Vid's hand, and I think Vid's hand would have looked a lot better on first turn than second turn here. I think Yevon's hand may actually look better on second turn than first. It has a lot of these big numbers, but it also is pretty good at sweeping stuff quite clearly. I think Yevon won the card select battle, possibly just choosing Hildebrand for someone who doesn't already wins that battle, which is, again, a reason that's probably not a card that should be allowed. So he has safety in 6 or 8, and I'm always really tempted to just say, I'm going to take that and run with it. Now, if you play safety in one of those squares, Vid will go in the other. Do you then have a follow-up in 3 or 7 that captures and is safe or difficult for the opponent to take as well? And I think the answer is not quite. So my instinct to go in 6 or 8, you probably leave those squares open. And if you want to leave those squares open, you probably go in 1, 2, or 4. Because both 6 and 8 seem like better squares to me for Yevon than for Vid. You have captures that you just lock in cards. So, okay, I think you want to leave those squares open. You want to keep A5, A1, and 9, 9, 1A in your hand. So you want to use Vormav or 6, 1, 6, 8, the kind of just like not thinking thing to do. And by not thinking, I mean like you just don't have to think much about it. It's like 6, 1, 6, 8 in 1 is probably a pretty good move. Like it's hard for you to get in too much trouble there. Now, maybe there's something that can happen, like Nanaki lands in 2. Now, I don't think that's a good move because that walks into a lot. But pretending it didn't walk into things, Nanaki in 2 now covers 6, right? It sets up a plus in 3. And so there are ways it could be tricky, but I would be thinking about something like that. 1, 2, or 4. 6, 1, 6, 8 seems like the worst card of the 3. So figuring out a way to do it with one of those. The hand is more up, down than side to side. So my instinct would be to go in 2 rather than 4, but you do want to calculate more specifically than I'm doing. So I think Yevon should probably play in 1 or 2. He goes in 2. Interestingly, he goes with Vormap. Huh. Now I guess if you go with 6168, but here either way 991A. So there's something 6168 does that I'm not seeing because I'm not sure why you would use Vormav over 6168. Vormav is like literally as good or better in every direction. Like as, if you ignore rules, Vormav is a strictly better card. 616A can pick up some 10s up and down, but so can A5A1. Maybe you need to pick up A5A1 in some line. I mean, I think this is probably reasonable, but it concedes two things. One, I don't, and I'm not saying this makes it a bad move. I'm saying I don't immediately see the variation that leads to preferring this. Um, and I think maybe actually saying the second thing will tell us about the first, and you may be screaming the first in your head because it's obvious to you. I think I'm going to get there shortly. But the second weird thing about this is either one of those cards puts out an 8 to the left. And that gives 28A6 a really powerful pickup in 1, right? It has this plus wall in 1 while being safe. Notably, Nanaki also has the plus wall in 1. And that combos through 5, which can potentially grab other cards, though I think is actually kind of unlikely to. But it gives this safety in 1, and it gives this combo through 1. And 6168 can combo back in 3. I don't think this is that important. I don't think there's going to be additional comboing through 5. You look at Vid's hand, there is one card in the hand that could ever be weak to 5 and 8, and no cards in the hand that could ever be weak to 5 anywhere else. And you look at your hand, Yevon's hand, there's slightly more potential to be weak to 5, but I just don't think combos are going through 5. I don't think it's going to actually happen here. Now, I've been known to underestimate the value of comboing through 5. This is something I have some history of not being as sharp a calculator on as I'd like to be. So it's possible I'm misevaluating this, but I don't think you need that combo back. I just think you want the recapture. I think 6168 made more sense here. Now it could be that the difference in numbers just don't matter, right? That 7 facing up is just running into 7s facing down, and the 6 facing up would do just as well. And it could be that the difference in number that I'm just assuming will matter does not actually matter. Interesting. I'm obviously skeptical, but he played in a square I wanted him to generally be playing with one of the cards I wanted him to play. I just, I'm not understanding here why 6168 wouldn't be preferable. Okay, let's look from Vid's perspective. The obvious thing to do is 28A6 in 1. And there is an argument for saving that for later. But if you're gonna save that for later, you want to play a line where the opponent cannot just occupy 1 in response themselves. Now, most moves actually, Yevon doesn't really have a big desire to play in one. So, okay, there's probably not a huge rush there. But let's say you play one, right? You play the safe move in one. If Yevon replies in 3 with say 6-1-6-8, so you've flipped 2 cards, you've made it 7-3. He makes it 5-5. You play 8-6-7-8 in 6. You make it 7-3 again. They play 9-9-1-A and 8, making it 5-5. That looks most natural, at least. And you play something like Nanaki and 4, and you tie. I mean, I'm sure there are other lines, but it's usually useful to get a sense of the position to kind of do a what if all the normal things happen, play that out to the end, and then you get a baseline kind of evaluation of the position. I think some people think kind of there's a choice between going shallow and broad, right? Kind of, okay, they could go here. How do I feel that looks? They could also go here. How do I feel that looks, right? You look at a lot of different possibilities for them and you don't like calculate too deeply. And right, that's one way to use your time. And then another way to use your time is to find what you think is a decent chance to be the likely move and just put in the likely moves at each opportunity and calculate deeply. And I find it more useful to calculate deeply and narrowly than to calculate shallowly and broadly. But I think if Triple Triad was like a 4x4 or a 5x5 game, and you were looking early in the game, and this is true somewhat in 3x3 as well early in the game, you just can't go that deeply and specifically. Lines, there are going to be too many possibilities, and you would switch to, I think, having shallow but broad be the better way to calculate. And you'd have to rely on really powerful evaluation. While I think in a 3x3 format, Triple Triad tends to rely on really powerful calculation being a little more valuable than evaluation. But that's all going to be relative to what other people are good at and shouldn't be taken as too big a thing. Anyways, my once over says 2-8-A6 and 1 has a very good chance to tie. I don't think it should be in trouble against any moves in 3. Maybe you get swept by like Hildebrand in 8 and they have these really powerful up down cards. But I think if that's the case, the 6-1-6-8 can't quite do enough damage to you. So Hildebrand 8 makes it 5-5. And say you play Nanaki in. No, not Nanaki. Say you play 8-6-7-8 in 3. If they take it in 6, they're up 6-4, but you have Nanaki in 4, and that ties. Yeah. So my guess is 2-8-A6 and 1 ties. Let's see what happens. Okay, Vid goes in 6. Now 6 has a clear logic to it, I think. Because 6 is one of those squares you can go in that will never be met by 1, right? If you go in 6 and they go in 3, you're getting 1. If you go in 6 and they go in 8, you're getting 3, and 3 is an even better prize than 1, especially because Yevon still doesn't have much good to put in 1. So, okay, this has a clear logic. However, it does give Yevon a way to use 6-1-6-8 and 3. So the two critical moves, I think, are 6-1-6-8 and 3, and Hildebrand in 8. So if 6-1-6-8 and 3, that does combo through. That makes it 6-4. Let's again not go incredibly deep on calculation and just kind of do obvious moves. 2-8-A6 in 1 is going to flip 2 things back. It's going to make it 6-4 the other way. But then 9-9-1-A lands in 8, making it 6-4 Yevon, and A5-A1 is going to get a capture at the end. Can't be stopped. So I think this is kind of a worse line of the versions we were looking at of like Vid goes 1, Yevon goes 3, Vid goes 6. Because in those lines, Vid gets 3 and 6. Vid gets 3 and 6, and Yevon gets 2. Here, Vid gets 2, but Yevon gets 3 and 6, and that's going to be +1 to Yevon in those lines, so that should be a win for Yevon. If Yeah, so if Yevon goes 6-1, 6-8, 3, one should lose. One definitely loses. How about 8? Can you go 8-6-7-8 in 8? It's 5-5. No, you die to 1, if nothing else. Yeah. Alright. Hildebrand 8 is less likely to work, but I think 3 just works. I think this is Yevon's win. Yevon does go 3. Does Vid have something? Vid goes 8. That's either the sign that he calculated something very specific or he does not have something, right? In this case, this sure looks like he's trying to lose 9-1 by walking into. Though it doesn't actually think he's gonna get. Don't actually think he's gonna get there. Hmm. Yeah, I think this is just trying to end the game. I think Yevon has won. I think a nice hand from Yevon with a starter from 5 that left no. They didn't give Vid a clear path. But I think Vid going 6 was a strange error unless one didn't work and I'm just missing some key line. This game gives me the feeling that I'm just missing some key stuff to evaluate. Which is not to say, like, if I'm right about things, that it was a bad game. It is to say there were some moves where there just must be some variation they're seeing that isn't obvious to me. Um, and I might be like, for instance, I might be right that 2-8-A6 and 1 tied for Vid, right? Let's say I'm right. I don't know, but let's say I'm right. That doesn't mean like, oh, you idiot, you should have played this obvious move. What it inevitably means when a really strong player doesn't play something like that and plays something that does go on to lose is they either saw something with 6 that had this real appeal. There was some sequence with 6 that looked a lot better than it ended up being, but would be interesting to know what it was, because when a good player missees something, they're still seeing something that has importance, that has value, and it is good to be able to figure out what they saw, because it might be an idea worth holding on to, even if it happened not to work here. But the other thing, the more likely thing, is I bet he saw something worrisome about 1. He saw something against 1, maybe 8, maybe Hildebrand 8 or something like that. Though we did check that briefly at least. But there was something that looked scary there in the obvious move. And so it can kind of go either way. It could be, right, it could be something like he thought I can go 6 and then go 1 and I get even more payoff for going 1, which is incorrect, but a reasonable way of thinking. And or it could be I see some problem with 1, I have to try to find some more complex or creative idea. And it's usually one of those types of things when a mistake is made. Also, I'm assuming 1 held. That could easily be wrong. All right, I'm going to pause the video while I bring up the next game we're going to look at, but Yevon wins the open game. After this, I don't think I have it. We'll see if I do. So we'll come back in a moment. All right, we're back. So Yevon wins the open game, and Vid wins the closed game. So we're on to game 3. It is the open closed game. It is same plus wall combo, FF decks, level 4 and 6. Must use at least 2 level 4s. So 2 level 4s, 3 level 6s is almost always going to be the combination. All cards must have a different number combination. I tend to like that stip, though it is not one I'm particularly good at. Max of 1-8-8. Okay. I think stips like that are really interesting because sometimes it's not actually a rule set where you want many 8-8s, but I think if people are told you can only have up to 1 of this card, they are more likely to run that type of card, right? In a vacuum, they might have thought, I think 8-7-5-3s are great. I think 7-7-5-4s are great. Um, I like maybe 8-6-5-3s. Okay, I'm going to run with 3 of those. You tell that person you can only have 1-8-8. Suddenly, they're probably thinking about 8-8s in that 8-6-5-3 slot, right? So I think, say it like there's sets like with 8-7-6-4s or something where like or 6-7-6-3s where you say max of 1-6-7-6-3. Well, I was going to try to run as many of those as you would allow me to. So okay, I'll only use 1 because I was going to run it anyway. But there are some other things where I don't think it's obvious that that is one of the best card types available. And I think strong players have a chance to run it or a chance not to run it. And if you see it in the stips, the main thing it should tell you is your opponent has a somewhat higher chance of running those cards than usual. It doesn't really mean you should be running exactly one. No rares. Cool. If a game is tied, you must change one or two cards from your hand from the previous game, and you cannot use the same hand twice. Well, that's really interesting as an effect, but that will be for thinking about between games, not for thinking about here. All right. So levels fours, we see both players using 4276. Sure. With FF decks only, there's going to be some limited selection on 7/6s. But you can also see, and this is in general a common thing, right? Why are 7/6 3/2s so popular? Because on level 4, you have to take 7s and 6s, and the 6/3 can flip 7s, the 6/2 can flip 6s. When you don't see those, what do you see? You see like 7/6 4/1s. The 4/1 can flip 7s, the 7/4 can flip 7s. What else do you see? 7/6 4/3s. The 7/4 and the 6/3 again can flip 7s. Now here you see 7/6 4/2s, and they both identified that. Why would they both identify that? Because a majority of the cards here are going to be level 6s, because there's a good chance one of those level 6s has two 8s on it. The 4276 is going to have more 2 gaps, right? 6 and 4, 4 and 2, and is going to be able to target 8s. I think this is a very reasonable decision, though I also always think I'm not planning to hold my level 4s for the late game, so I do not want to be that reliant on them as my way of capturing 8s. In the same way that, like, having a low level, 6566 that we saw last game might be a very reliable way to take 10s, but I don't really want to be holding on to it into the late game because I don't think it can do that much else compared to what my higher level cards can do. So I think this is a good decision. I think this is the right decision from both players, but I wouldn't feel that strongly at that point that I had covered 8s. Vid goes 3/6 4/6 and Yevon goes 6/2 6/4. Here we see some difference. They're both going 6/6 4s, but Vid is interested in picking up some 7s here, while Yevon is purely in take 8s mode, right? And you can also see this with the level 6s that they chose is Vid forwent a card with 8s on it. And I guess that's a pattern we're seeing in both these Vid games, is him willing to not use uh, cards with the highest number on them, going for more dynamic cards like 7/7 5/4 this game or Nanaki and 8/6 7/8 last game, rather than pure power cards. Now, one thing to note is this game, Vid has first turn, and this is a strategy that, in my opinion, is going to look better on first turn than second turn. And so it is not, I don't think it's like inherently going more dynamic versus more power. I don't see as inherently a like good versus bad decision. I see it as a, do I want to be able to press more on first turn, in which case I should go more dynamic, or do I want to be able to hold more on second turn, or potentially be able to press on second turn depending on the rule set? Which turn do I want to weight myself more towards? And that has a whole bunch going on with that too, because let's say you're a better first turn player. Do you want to maximize that strength by going dynamic? Or do you want to like mitigate your relative weakness? If you're a great first turn player, you might be a good second turn player, but presumably you're not as good. Do you want to mitigate the weakness of your second turn play? I think is really interesting, and I think it's one of the nice things about not knowing which turn you're going to play. Obviously it can suck if you get 5 of whatever turn in a row that you don't want, but it means there's some balance to picking your hands. And I think we're seeing here from Yevon more going with power, and we're seeing more from Vid going with dynamism. And in the first game, this went well for Yevon. And we'll see how it goes here. Yevon going with a 6/1 6/8 again. It's fun to see a repeat card in your hand across rule sets. You can see how that would play well with Yevon's 8s. You can also see how it might play well with his 6/2 6/4. Yevon choosing cards that are going to play off each other. And you can see there are also some like incidental combos, like 2885 could plus wall 7834. Vid's hand also has some targeting of itself. 7475 can pick up 8714. The 4288 is covered one way, but not both. I think Vid looking more for cards that should be able to play against what Yevon is doing, rather than trying to play off his own cards, which is again kind of the pattern we saw in the last game, right? And so it's, you really do see styles in hand building. And one thing TTAC can show is, by making you build so many more hands, it's going to mean two things. One is it's going to mean we have a much bigger sample of kind of hands to look at and notice traits about players and see, oh, hey, this is something interesting this great player is doing. This is something interesting that great player is doing. But it also means you probably have less time to put together each individual hand. And so you're going to rely more on your instincts, I think, and it's going to show those instincts more clearly. All right, let's look at what happened. 3, 6, 4, 6, and 8. Okay, uses the weakest card in his hand. Check. Makes sense. Okay, so I think of Yevon as like the king of side starters in the modern era of play. Maybe that should be Vialva, but Vialva tends to play defensive side starters. Yevon tends to play offensive side starters. And here we're seeing Vid play an offensive side starter. And what I mean by that is he's not playing an 8 saying, I have safe recaptures in 9 and 7. 8714 does not have a safe recapture in 7. 4276 or 4288 do not have safe recaptures in 9. In fact, it's pretty hard for Vid to recapture from 7. But what he is saying is, you don't have safety next to this card. This is an aggressive side starter. 4288, you don't have an 8 up. You have 8s in each other direction, but you do not have an 8 up. And so I'm going to make the game not so much facing where you don't have power, because you have power facing down, but facing where you don't have power out from. If you go in 7 or 9, I can attack it immediately and be quickly locking in cards. And I find this type of starter really interesting because it is not in my lexicon, but I think it is a powerful starter type. It's a type of move I don't see that I do have a lot of faith in. And the thing that really brought me around to being excited by it was Yevon in the Open GB right after the return of the site. Went on a phenomenal run, just crushing people with aggressive side starters. So interesting to see how he will react to something that I think he has been the best player at utilizing regularly. Though interestingly, after that tournament, he almost entirely stopped using them after that fantastic run. It's really weird. You look at Yevon year to year, and he just plays quite differently each year, as best I can tell in Open. Kind of strange. All right, but always doing something interesting, just quite different stuff. One thing I notice is Vid really does not have good recaptures in 7. So if you're Yevon and you can take from 9 and have any play covering 6, that seems really promising. So one thing I notice is if you play like 4276 and 9, and Vid plays either of 4276 or 4288 and 6, you have a plus wall in 3. Now maybe that's not quite good enough, because if, say, it goes 42769, 42766, 28853 can be met by 7475 and 5, I think, pretty securely. If you had 4276, you could plus wall that in 2. So maybe you need a different card to put in 9. Maybe 6168 in 9 is interesting. Because 7475 and 6 you combo, and they have no combo back. You have 4276 to combo that. 4288 or 4276 you can combo in 3. They can combo back in 5. You combo back in 6, but you're in 2. But your combo back actually isn't that great. Hmm. Okay, so 61689 42766 is my main line. Is there something powerful there? I don't know. Maybe that's fine for bid. Okay. Hmm. It's so close. This also means you could start in 7 quite reasonably. If they take from 4, you always have the combo back from 9. And if they, or you could play in 1, you can combo back any capture from 1 as well. And if they go in 9, surely you have a reasonable L somewhere, right? Yeah. I don't know what I'd do. I think I'd go in 7 or 9. Let's see what Yevon does. There's also a vague case, I think, for going in 6 because, or 3, just because Vid is quite weak to the right, and maybe you can take advantage of that. But all right, let's see what happens. He goes 9 with 6168. I like this move. This is a move I was considering. My main line here, this was the move I was considering, was 4276 in 6, I think is really complicated. After 2885 and 3, there's 7475 and 5, there's 4276 and 2. And what's happening at the end of that? At the end of that line, I think Yevon is up 6-4, but Vid has cards in 6 and 9. Vid does keep the cards in both 6 and 9. Um, and so maybe 4288 in 1. That should tie. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a tie. I think it's a complicated tie and scary to go into. Will he go into it? No, he goes 4. He goes 4. Huh. All right. So it's not super comfortable for Yevon, but Yevon's not really susceptible to combos. If you're Yevon, you play 7, 8, 3, 4, and 7. I'm not. Maybe you can put other cards there, right? I think you want to keep 2885. I think 7834 is a powerful card, but obviously it no longer faces the action of the game. Um, and you might say, okay, well, we'll need its right power, but 2885 can do that. I think you just play 7834 and 7. And I think you spend a little time calculating if there's something like if you see something scary and need to, but why would that be the card you need to hold on to? Maybe 4288 and 6 is worrisome, where 7475 has some play in 5. I don't think so. I think you just go in 7. He goes in 5. There wasn't a combo threat in that square. So I guess if we go back a sec, so if 7834 and 7, say 4288 and 5, right? That's the move you're scared of if you're blocking 7 in advance. 428 or if you're blocking 5 in advance. So 78347 makes it 7-3. 42885 makes it 5-5. Say you go 6-2-6-4-1. You're up 6-4. You have a pretty good double captures in every square you need it. That seems so promising to me. That might not be a win, but at 5, very unexpected to me. All right, my screen's not updating. One sec. There we go. I think yours was, but mine wasn't. 5. So this does set up 6-2-6-4 and 6, but you're never going to need 6-2-6-4 and 6. Okay, okay. So one thing I was being dumb about was I didn't realize that that Vid did not have a capture in 7. Okay. Now Vid does have play in 6. It does have play in 6. Huh. This is weird now. Okay. So just like say the main line is I'm not sure which card Vid should be thinking to put in 7. Because like 4276 has 2, 7475 has 6, but that's comboed back. 4288 just generally has useful power and is the second best card in some squares. Let's say you play 4288 and 7. You're down 6-4. You're down 6-4. If Yevon goes in 6, you can play 1 with 7475 and your 4276 gets you at least a tie. You might have better, but you have at least a tie. If you go 7 and Vid plays 1 with 6264, you are down 7-3. There's some weird lines. You're down 7-3. So like 4276 and 2 ties, but I was looking for more. Okay, I think this is ties. I think you go in 7 and you tie. Okay. He does go 4288 and 7. This makes sense. Now if you're Yevon, we should figure out which move is our way to hold this. Because I sort of said both of them tie-ish, but like not very specifically. So say you go 6264 in 6. It's 6-4. If they go either card in 3, they make it 5-5, but then you just block 2 and their last card can't do anything, you tie. If they go the combo in 2, that flips 2 things, but you flip back in 3 and you win. And if they go in 1, 7475 is the logical card to put in 1. But either way, you can play 4276 in 3. You go up 7-3. They don't combo anything back. All right, so ties everywhere. Okay. He goes 1. Now, I didn't check this one as thoroughly. It also looked like a tie to me, but we should check. So the messy line is 7475 and 6 flips 3 things. But then 4276 and 3 flips back everything. And even though 4276 and 2 is a plus, how much extra does it combo? I think that's just 5-5 at the end. I might be counting that wrong, but I think that's 5-5. Because Vid goes 6, flips 5, 9, and 8 via combo. Yevon goes 3, that flips 6, which flips 9, which flips 8. It never flips, and flipping 8, sorry, flips 7 as well, right? It never flips 5. So when the last turn goes in 5, I think that's 6-4 to Yevon. All right, I'm having trouble counting. Let's move on to a different line. That's not a win for Vid, and we found ties for Vid in 2, so that's where we should be thinking. I don't think there's any point to 4276 and 3. Oh! Oh no, 7475 and 3. I was thinking 7475 and 3, the opponent can't actually go 6, but you don't have anything for 6 yourself, so they can just block 2. 4276 in 2 makes it 5-5. Oh, they've used 6264. He doesn't have 6 anymore. Does that just win? I think that just wins. Yeah, 4276 and 2. And 7475 sweeps. You needed 6264 for both squares. So Yevon 1 and 6 both looked reasonably tie-like, but Yevon picks the wrong one. Yeah, and Vid advances. And so Vid wins this game 3. He also won the closed to advance to the finals, where he will meet Delial or Tezuka. As I am recording this, that game will happen tomorrow. I did complain that they didn't put up the move orders to these games, and I complained in the power rankings. So some people will note that I actually did have access to the move order, but I still think it's really rude not to provide them, and I'm still annoyed by that. This is, of course, the same day I recorded that, so it makes sense I'd still be annoyed. But I don't understand why you wouldn't provide them. It takes so little time and effort. Um, Anywho, congrats to Vid for making the finals of TTAC 15. The only other time in history, and it happened in some ways quite similarly. Beast Day lost in the quarterfinals. Beast Day then, his opponent withdrew from the tournament. Now, Vid's opponent did not withdraw, but another semifinalist did withdraw. Both legendary players, Lionheart and Seto. The player was reinstated in the semifinals, Beast Day and Vid. Both players went on to win their semifinals to advance to the finals. And Beast Day went on to defeat arguably the greatest of all time in Doc Evil in the finals. And certainly one of the two best players whose name starts with a D. And there is let's just call it a coin flip, a 50-50 chance that Vid will be facing Delial in the finals. Will history repeat? No idea. Tezuka does look incredible. Delial is, always favorite over everyone. Who knows how this will go, but yeah, Vid will face the winner in the finals. Vid is tremendously good in these mixed formats. While he has not won a TTAC nor made a finals before in TTAC, his results in both open and closed tournaments have been really strong, and that makes it very evident that in a mixed format, he is one of the players best calibrated to handle that. So, yeah, Vid wins the semifinals. Yevon has had a tremendous year. I was really rooting for him to pull through here because I think it's so cool to see a player whose last icon was in 2005, when I believe he beat Vid in the semifinals. Maybe it was the quarters, but I think in the semifinals to make the finals of TTAC 3, and then doesn't make a TTA icon, doesn't get quarterfinals in a TTA tournament until 2023, and semifinals Cosmos and semifinals TTAC 15. I thought that was just such a fun run. I was really happy for him, and I'm still very happy for him. But also, I think Vid in this format is the better player and is going to be a really tough finals opponent for either one who plays him. I think you look over the history of closed hand tournaments, and you're probably going to conclude Vid is, if not the best at it, very close, but it's pretty easy to conclude he's the best at it. And he's had good results in TTACs. He's one of the best to play this format. He's a very strong competitor here.